Russian disinformation again. The latest alleged shenanigans have been about the interference in the UK rioting this week. The troll farms seem to be on overtime. But does Russia even need to destabilise the West, given the conflicts and tensions within our system? Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
European and NATO leaders are unanimously calling for a stronger response to what they describe as a shadow war being waged by Russia against European countries. Western allies are emphasizing the need for greater awareness and action against Russia's use of cyber attacks, disinformation and sabotage to destabilize the region. Russia's increasingly bold tactics have been observed in intelligence reports, though reportedly not all countries recognize the severity of the threat. According to experts, Russia's non-military strategies, such as cyber intrusions and arson attacks, are both cost-effective and impactful. The only way to counter such activities is for European nations to adopt both passive and active defense measures. An increasing number of Western leaders agree that European countries must be ready to take decisive actions to defend against Russia's ongoing attempts to undermine their societies. Incidents such as the 2007 cyber attack on Estonia and the 2014 explosion at a Czech munitions depot are early examples of Russia's hybrid warfare model. More recently, Finland accused Russia of weaponizing migration to destabilize its society, leading to the closure of its borders with Russia. Similar experiences were reported by the Baltic states, along with Poland. During the latest NATO summit in Washington, D.C., participants agreed that NATO members need to strengthen cooperation, improve intelligence sharing, and possibly increase defense spending beyond the current 2% of GDP target. Experts warn that Russia's aggressive actions will not be limited only to Ukraine, which is why providing the country with continued and enhanced support, including potential NATO membership, is essential. In Washington, the leaders stressed that Ukraine's alignment with NATO is crucial to preventing future conflicts and securing European stability.
I'm delighted to welcome our guest today, Dr. Małgorzata Bonikowska. She is the President of the Centre for International Relations. Welcome once more to the programme.
Good morning.
The internet, false fake news, disinformation. Is it right to characterise the internet as not the fount of wisdom, but also of just a global village gossip, where half-truths are thrown around and people are manipulated?
In a way, it's both. I mean, it depends where you go, what you want to find, and how you search for that. Internet was, and it still is, a great thing for all of us. You know, it's such a convenient thing. Instead of just waiting that we can go to library or to check a book, we can just Google in the same, in a moment. We can find the right information. And so that's definitely plus. A big plus is also that many things, many procedures can be much more transparent, and people can watch it, can be engaged. And of course, social media, the same. It could be really also a very positive effect that every citizen has a voice and can, participate in a global debate. But in the same time, the development of the internet, the trends went into a dangerous direction as well. We are not still able to handle big techs in the sense of they created platforms, but they are not responsible for the content. So in a way, we don't know really who is responsible. And we don't have still the system which we have as far as the traditional media, where when you publish in a newspaper or you say something in the radio or on television like
Yes.
we discussed today, you have to be responsible for your words, because if you say something which is completely not true, somebody can, even sue you for this. And of course, everything is regulated, and we are not anonymous. We are faces, we are names, people know. And the internet is completely different. We can have a lot of posts made by anonymous people, and even now bots, which grows more and more. Posts are made not by humans even. And of course, in here we are facing a huge danger of disinformation campaigns done also by state actors. And especially where we start to have a problem with the state, like we have with Russia. We have a war in Ukraine, and Russia positioned itself as an enemy to the West. The West is an enemy to Russia by Russians. It's their kind of decision that they decided to go that way. So this puts us in a danger because we are a very open society, or societies in democracies, while Russia is not. Is authoritarian regime, and there are many other countries like that. By the way, democracies, when you look at the map of the world, we are in minority. We are having around 200 states on earth, but only 70 plus have democratic systems. So we are in minority, and our societies, our people, we are just exposed by freedom of speech, which is a great thing to have, but in the same time, we have to be resilient to new dangers and disinformation and manipulation. All this, which is happening very much in the internet and around us, it's a big danger of the 21st century.
The internet obviously is the main channel for this, the main medium. Before it used to be television, cinema, radio, that kind of thing. How do we see a page on our screens, then we see a page, a similar page, or a page saying A, another page saying A is B, and how do we differentiate or fight between two similarly looking pages?
Very good question. I think people first of all have to remember that they have a brain. They should have a brain and use it. So it's a critical thinking needed. It's thinking needed, generally. So if you don't know, based on your instinct, based on your knowledge you have to just use it. And don't react immediately. Just think twice, 3 times before you, for example, forward something, or before you just make a comment. It's difficult because time pressure is so much that people don't do it. We stop just using our own capacities. We see it, unfortunately, also in many cases among politicians, that they are under such a time pressure that they act before they think. We should first think and then act.
That's very simple, but it's the most difficult thing to do, isn't it?
Well, because of this time pressure, yes. Everybody feels it, I guess, that, there's no enough time. We are always in a hurry, and there's not even enough time to read all the news we would like to read. Forget that we digest it, forget that we try to really dig into the problem. So some people react by switching off. They stop using social media, they stop using even sometimes internet. And of course, it doesn't resolve the problem, because in the same time we would like to be updated. We would like to know and follow the events. More and more people in democracies use internet also as a source of information. For example, newspapers, the classical newspapers, number of copies is dropping down. So I think the media, the classical media today, it's really an important industry, because it can bring us back to selection and to a better understanding of the world if it's done properly. Social media, it is a big question as far as what we should do really to be able to use it in a much smarter way, including the top leading platforms such as Facebook, such as X or Twitter, former Twitter, because we are not happy with what is happening in these channels.
How do we follow? We talked briefly about following the trail back to a state actor. Is that an easy process to use, to trace the origin of a doubtful article or a doubtful piece of information? And should it be up to the state, our states here in Western Europe, to marshal the resources? Is it an expensive operation to follow and to combat these troll farms wherever they are?
First of all, we have to understand that this is really an operation going on. So the beginning of this massive use of internet, we can put it end of 80s, the 90s especially in our part of the world, Central Eastern Europe. But this was a completely different reality. We were really jumping into a new thing, but there was much more organized in a way, despite all the chaos. Now we have a very static system where we have only certain channels which are really massive and have incredible impact on people, such as Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. We have Google, who is a leading search engine everybody uses. So these channels are unfortunately used not only by people, they are also used by gangs. It's a new way of, crime, actually, cybercrime. And they are also used by state actors who not necessarily wish us well. As far as crime is concerned, it's like any other crime.
Yes.
We have to search for it, and we have to somehow be able to capture it and penalize it, because these structures, these businesses even, do it mainly for money, to cyber attack, to create a chaos or earn, for example, more on the stock exchange. So these things have to be, like in any other form of crime, investigated, followed up, and captured. The challenge, the real challenge for the states, are state actors. Because if we take a country like Russia, where we have definitely a war with, in information terms, we are at war with Russia. It's not a conventional war. The conventional war is in Ukraine, the tanks, the missiles. But Europe is definitely, or the whole West is definitely at war with Russia as far as disinformation and even cyber attacks.
What are the sacrifices that we may have to make in terms of our civil liberties and our way of life in order to combat this? You seem to suggest that, okay, we have this massive threats here, threats there, crime, etc., etc. Does devolving it to the state mean that we have to sacrifice some of our daily liberties in this war?
First of all, we have to be aware that this war exists. I don't think that's exactly where we are yet. People in the West, maybe less in Poland, but even here, we are not really having this impression that the war is also here, in a different domain, but it's here.
Yes.
Because when we are at war, we behave differently. We are much more careful. We are much more, let's say, analytical. We see red lights in many actions. But we are still not at that stage, so people are still going into a lot of unfortunate, plots done in the internet space, right? From the technical point of view, it's captured in a sense that the states, the EU, the US, we are very much aware of this. And there are many instruments we try to develop. And also financially, the budgets are much higher than earlier. And the structures are built to be able to fight it, this kind of war. But we are not yet very much effective. Also because we are very much exposed. For example, election time. Election time is the best time to intervene in our social media and in our public debate, which is basically in the internet today. So it's not necessary to create very complicated actions. It's enough to put here and there some posts which encourage people to be radical, because there is a fuel to real frustrations. So look at what's happening in the US during campaign. It will be more and more radical debate, right? There will be attacks because campaigning is always a kind of very radical narrative, right? But look at what's happening in the UK, the protests. Earlier, there were many protests, and they are still in France. There are many countries in democracies which are under difficult times. People are frustrated, they go on the streets, they protest, but why do they do it? Also because the fuel is added to the real emotions. So this is one of the ways how Russian propaganda operates.
Is it the same psychological process by which, Russians manipulators, advertising agencies manipulators, big corporations manipulators to buy products, to buy a blue shirt and not a red shirt, for example? Is it the same? Do they know something fundamentally accurate about the human psyche in order to...
Well, I wouldn't really compare all these things because,
political marketing?
Manipulation or propaganda is as old as human nature, human civilizations, Because, of course, for example, the authoritarian powers, they were always trying to deliver some information which was a kind of a propaganda or positioning the ruler in a certain optics. But today, when you mention, for example, businesses who do advertising, that's, of course, maybe a manipulation, and there are smart ways of encouraging us, for example, to buy something. But it's not disinformation. It's a big difference. Disinformation is where you create a completely false message. And now, with the techniques, you go even deeper. You create false videos, false photos, false texts, or simply lies, which are then copied by thousands or millions of people without even sometimes realizing that that's fake. So we have a fake news. We have also deep fake, meaning completely not real images or videos which didn't exist, sometimes with real people. So it's a danger also for individuals, politicians, celebrities, actors, business people, top level. And all this is very hard to capture. In this way, it's a completely new phenomenon that people in the internet, with the time, but it's really happening even now, have difficulty in recognizing that that's not a real video, that's not a real photo. So we are very weak as consumers towards this phenomenon. And that's a challenge, how to fight it.
One historian said that in the explosion of the information in the 16th century, printing press, so the world had this wonderful tool. The bestseller in Europe was the Bible, and the second bestseller was a book about witch hunting. Mm-hmm. And so we've not seemed to come all that far from that.
But that's still different. I would stress the really unique situation we are in. Earlier, for centuries, there was always not enough information. There was a hunger for any information because people basically didn't know much. Yeah. So the printed press, Gutenberg, what this miracle was, is that even the Bible reached the people, simply as that. Because it was a massive production, not only writing by hand, by monks, right? Then the development of mass media, like newspapers, like the 19th century, which was a revolution in technology, giving us photography, giving us telegram, telephone, then radio in the 20th century, then television. So all that these industries were giving us more and more information, meaning people felt better informed. So the knowledge came with that, right? And in the same time, our system of education was also, by centuries, enlarging first and then improving. And finally, in 20th century, we reached the moment where we have a massive popular education for all and mandatory education for all. I'm talking about democracies because still at the world, we still have, unfortunately, cases people are illiterate in this sense. But now, there was a break in this in the 90s with CNN, actually, where the television proved we are able to provide news 24/7, all the time. And since then, with the internet and social media, now there is an opposite phenomenon. We have too much of information. We have so many pieces.
A massive ocean of information.
It's ocean. We are, instead of being more informed, the knowledge doesn't come with that. It's the opposite. The chaos comes. We are completely lost with this ocean of different pieces. And then with the fake news and disinformation, which is more and more evident, we are lost in double sense because we are not able to distinguish what is real and what is fake. So we reach the stage we have a kind of, we need a different resilience to this phenomenon. We call it media literacy, which is like bringing back, the essence to our thinking based on good education. Maybe our education is not good enough.
Yes,
but we should be able to analytically realize and be able to distinguish what is possible and probable and what is complete nonsense that, with using our brain, we can see that it cannot happen.
Yes, critical analysis again. The old wisdom, cut once, measure twice. So thank you very much for coming onto our programme.
Thanks a lot.
So that's all we have time for today. Do join us again for How We Got Here.